So, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good day to each and everyone. My name is Hakima Lanto Maruhum, and together with my group mates, we will be discussing the chapter 10 entitled Negative Global Flows and Processes. So, the chapter 10 analyzes negative global flows and processes such as dangerous imports, cross-border crime, terrorism, and war. So, sa chapter 10, malalaman natin yung mga negative flows ng globalization when it comes to dangerous imports, cross-border crime, terrorism, and war. According kay Bauman 2006-96, ours is a wholly negative globalization, unchecked, not supplemented, and uncompensated for by a positive counterpart which is still a distant prospect at best, though according to some, prognosis already a far long chance. So, ang kanyang ibig sabihin dito is ang para sa kanya globalization is fairly or entirely negative because ang nakikita lang natin is yung counterpart niya which is its positive effects without even looking at its negative effects. So that's why he said that globalization is a wholly negative globalization. And another key point of the globalizations is the issue of what is regarded as positive or negative about globalization and often depends on one's perspective and position. So, another key point is that para sa kanya, ang globalization is it's depend on the point of view of one another. Kung ano yung one's perspective mo, kung ano yung tingin mo sa isang bagay, is either it's positive or negative. Like for example, is the U.S. They can see that new liberalism is a good thing for them, but for the other country, it's largely more creating problems. And finally, it needs to be pointed out that negative globalization were merely involved together flows and processes, but also structures of the global effects at least some would regard as largely, if not totally, negative. Kung baga, kung ang tingin mo sa isang kung ang globalization is ang tingin mo sa is positive, then its structure is also positive, and kung ang tingin mo naman sa kanya is negative, then its also structure is negative. Like for example, yun nga sa US, ang kung ang tingin mo sa US ang neoliberalism is a good thing, but for the other country it's a negative thing, then you can also tell that yung kung ang neoliberalism sa iyo is negative, then pwede rin yung structures niya is like IMF and World Bank is negative. Next topic is the dangerous imports. According to Barrio Nuevo 2007 B1 B9, the flow of all sorts of products from every corner of the world has made it near impossible to know precisely the true nature of the products entering a country. So, ang baga dito, bumili ka ng isang product pero hindi mo na malalaman kung saan ito nanggaling o who is the original maker of that product because of the dangerous imports that entering in our country. Global value chains involve the importation of both products and product ingredients. So, that's the definition of global value chains. Kung ang isang country is bumili ng product, then sa ibang bansa is bibilihin din niya yung product ingredients upang gayahin yung products. But para hindi masyadong halata is pwede niyang dagdagan or bawasan yung ingredients na binili niya. Product ingredients na binili niya. The greater the use of global ingredients, the greater the difficulty in ensuring that no contaminants find their way into finished products. So, sa finished products na nagawa ng isang countries, hindi na natin malalaman kung alin sa mga ingredients na yon or yung finished products, hindi natin malaman kung contaminated ba yon or hindi because of its numerous different ingredients from the different countries. Dahil sa mga iba't ibang ingredients na galing sa ibang bansa is mahirap nating allocate yung mga contaminates ingredients from that finished products. Globalization has led to an increase not only in imports of all kinds but in imports that are dangerous to a nation and its citizens. So, parang example nito is yung Chinese imports from US. So, ginagaya ng Chinese yung ibang products ng US. That's why it can also be dangerous from the Chinese nation and US nations and their citizens. Lastly, it is important to remember that many other countries uh, have been or that they are involved in the global exportation of dangerous products. So, yun nga, an example of this is yung kumbaga yung sa Chinese is nag-import sila ng products sa US. Another example is this kung yung product ng China which is the Huawei phone and ginaya nila yung product ng US which is the Apple. But no, nung malaman ng in the year 2019, I think 2019-2020 na ban yung product ng Huawei sa Google and Android. That's why uh, uh, that's why it's called a dangerous imports.
Good day, everyone. I am Ika JP Koime, and in continuation with Chapter 10, let us discuss about the borderless diseases. That is one of the sub-chapters in Chapter 10, the negative global flows and processes. First, let us discuss about plague, malaria, tuberculosis or TB, which is a lung disease, and sexually transmitted infections or STIs that have long spread globally or had spread all over the world in different countries. So, um, plague is plague is an infectious disease caused by Yersinia pestis bacteria that's usually found in small mammals that would include dogs, cats, hamsters, and rabbits and their fleas. And it can transmit also from animals to humans as it is a zoonotic bacterium. So human in nature love pets because some people really love taking care of pets just like cats, dogs, and rabbits and hamsters. So there is a casual contact between them, and then that would that would transmit the disease from the animals to humans. And the next one is the tuberculosis or the TB, which is a lung disease, and it can transfer from one person to another through saliva and blood transfusion. So through that, spread talaga yung disease which is tuberculosis in one area to another. That is why if may symptoms na ipinapakita yung mga kapitbahay natin or yung mga tao sa barangay, there is what we call the barangay health workers or the BHW. Sila yung nagpa-facilitate niyan, sila yung nagso-survey kung meron bang mga may symptoms ng TB, and then they let them undergo treatment at parang kina-quarantine siya kasi it is very possible because there are types of TB. Hindi lang naman isang types ng TB which is a tuberculosis, but it has many, and then one of its types is nagka-transmit siya through saliva. It is why some patients gumagamit sila ng sarili nilang utensils. And also, we have malaria. Malaria that causes dengue or dengue fever na ang malaria kasi parang nag siya yung parang medium na nagtatransmit ng dengue fever o ng disease. It's because it's a mosquito. Then once a mosquito is kumagat sa isang tao na infected na, tapos kakagat na naman siya sa ibang tao naman, at yung infection is matatransfer from that person to another. So, kaya siya nasa-spread through mosquitoes that causes dengue fever to people. At saka, it is also deadly. The dengue fever is very deadly as it weakens the immune system of a person. And the last one is the STI or the sexually transmitted infections that is caused by HIV or human immunodeficiency virus. Yes, human immunodeficiency virus and STI would further be considered as STD, or the sexually transmitted disease. And then from that, once na ang HIV, kapag nandun na siya sa tao at kapag na-infect na ang tao nun, tapos nag-manipulate na siya sa body ng tao, it weakens its immune system, doon na siya matawag na AIDS, or the acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, na very rampant na rin sa ating society and throughout the world. So this is an STI, which is a syphilis. So syphilis, kadalasan siya sa male kasi it originated talaga sa male, no, sa European countries. Sila yung nagdala nito ng syphilis. Parang nabubuo siya kadalasan dahil na rin sa for example, prostitution, and then paiba-iba ng partner ang isang lalaki o isang babae. Kadalasan anong tawag dito, nagdadala ng STI na to, o yung parang siya yung nagkakaroon ng infection as a male, at pwede rin siyang matransmit into a female once na nag-sexual intercourse sila. And next slide is so it is stated here that syphilis is spread by European colonialism and military exploits. So sila yung nagdala ng syphilis sa iba't ibang bansa. So however, the roots of the disease were probably in Europe, and it was spread by European colonialism and military exploits. In fact, for many, the disease was closely associated with French soldiers, and it came to be known in some parts of the world as the French disease. Kasi, not to pero in general kasi parang kapag soldiers or male people kasi kapag especially with their kind of job as a soldier, so hindi maiiwasan, so dumadalo sila sa iba't ibang lugar, so there is prostitution and everywhere, so there's a possibility na may ka sexual intercourse sila, and then doon na buo ang infection. So it was called French disease kasi parang it originated through history na French soldiers nung nagdala ng disease na yon. At from that, it transferred from one person to another through sexual intercourse or direct contact. And then the next one is the severe acute respiratory syndrome, or the SARS, and the bovine spongitorum exceplatulaffi BSE, or the mad cow disease. So this SARS, it is also caused by a virus. So respiratory, parang tina-target niya yung respiratory system mo. Yung bovine experiment encephalopathy naman o BSE, or mas tinatawag na mad cow disease, ay ito siya ay parang ang tina-target naman ng disease na to is yung mga baka. And then, para silang nababaliw. And then, also, one country that is a major producer of beef ay medyo nag-stop ang kanilang production dahil na rin dito, which is the mad cow disease, dahil nababaliw ang mga baka. And then, it doesn't really directly transfer from a person to another, from an animal, which is the baka to a person, pero it's very possible with the kind of work na, for example, you are the one who takes care of the cows in the farm, so there's a very big possibility na matatransmit siya from a cow to a person, and then its effects to a human is it targets the brain. Yung brain niya, yung tina-target niya nung disease na to, which is mad cow disease. Kasi even sa baka is doon siya nagta-target, o doon siya tumatarget sa brain. So people cannot get mad cow disease. So yun nga, hindi dali-dali na makakuha siya ng mad cow disease. So but in rare cases, they may get a human form of mad cow disease that is called a variant Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, which is a disease often found in cattle that can cause a brain disease, which is the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease in humans. So this is how it likes. So parang dito siya, it is how it infects the brain. So brain yung, dito naman it is the mad cow, o siya yung isang bakan affected ng disease, which is the mad cow disease. So the flow or spread of these diseases tells us greatly about nature and the reality of globalization in the 21st century, and borders were opened due to globalization. Kasi ang globalization, parang ino-open niya yung borders ng iba't ibang country the in order for the transportation of products, goods, and goods na mag-transfer siya from from one country to another due to shipments. Kaya, parang ino-open niya yung borders. And that also lead to these borderless diseases kasi mas madali siyang ma-transmit from one person to another and from one country or one region to another dahil na rin sa parang inaalaw ng mga tao na makapasok kasi ang tendency kasi niyan is that a person is not yet medically diagnosed with a disease, tapos hindi niya alam na infected person pala siya, and then nagbakasyon siya for example sa ibang bansa, hindi niya alam na dala-dala na yung disease na yun in particular. So without knowing, is nagsaspread na pala siya ng disease from one person to another in the other country or in the other region. And that would cause a large harm or parang major harm to people kasi magsaspread siya directly. Kasi ang people, mga tao, tayo is, we're very social persons kasi hindi naman tayo mabubuhay na tayo lang, so we socialize a lot, and then dahil na rin sa araw-araw na pamumuhay or in our everyday living, we always we get to socialize with other people. And in fact, a report issued in August of 2007 argued that new infectious diseases are emerging at an unprecedented rate that are being spread globally because of the much greater mobility of people associated with the expansion of all sorts of transportation. Yun na nga kasi, even in the Philippines or other countries, talagang siksikan. So for example, if you're riding a bus sa siksikan, and for example also the train, kasi yung siksikan talaga. So once an infected person, papasok siya doon, and without knowing na infected pala siya, there are so many people na matatransmit niya ng disease. And not only one person, but for example, if an infected person can transmit a disease to 10 people, and then that 10 people would again transmit the disease to another 10 people. So there is a very, parang ang dali lang niyang ma-transmit, or ang infection is, or ang disease is napakadaling mag-spread. So this is it. World Health Organization report issued in August of 2007 argued that new infection diseases are emerging at an unprecedented rate. So it is quoted in Rosenthal 2007, A9 as cited in Ritzer'S 2010. So, and the other one is the HIV or the AIDS, or HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus, and the AIDS is Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. So, ano nga ba ang pagkakaiba ng HIV at AIDS? So, ang HIV, it's a virus. So, virus lang siya na hindi pa siya wala pang host na, wala pa siyang host. It means na virus lang siya. Wala pa siya sa human, hindi pa siya nakaka-manipulate sa body. Pero once na makahanap na siya ng host at nandun na siya sa body ng isang tao, then it will be called as AIDS, or the Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome, na tumatarget sa immune system ng isang tao. So, it can be transmitted through blood transfusion and sexual contact. So, akala ng marami na kapag may AIDS ang isang tao, hindi ka na pwedeng makagamit ng utensils na ginagamit niya. It is not. It is proven na saliva, AIDS cannot transfer through saliva. Hindi siya matitransfer. Pwede na lang kung syringe na isang tao, which is yung syringe na isang tao is ginamit to another, which is very impossible naman. Kasi in any medical facility naman, isang gamit lang ang syringe for example lang, na ginamit siya yun. So, it can possibly matatransmit niya and that disease from one person to another. And also the blood transfusion. Yung mga may AIDS na tao, bawal sila mag-donate ng blood kasi there is a very big possibility kasi nandun sa genes niya yung virus, makaka-transmit siya on that disease to the other. And also the main transmittal of that disease is the sexual contact between a male and a female or homosexual sexual intercourse. So, matitransmit din siya from one person to another. And also, genetics. Kasi, for example, yung parents ng isang bata is HIV positive or may AIDS, there is a very big possibility na mamamana ng batang yon yung disease inborn from the parents, and also breastfeeding also may lead to transmittal of the disease. So, with this, the WHO or the World Health Organization urge every country to cooperate upon dealing with the diseases kasi napakarampant ng spread niya. So, on being responsive kasi together with other nations, the countries are really working on it or working hard na to get rid of the diseases or makakalap ng vaccines and any other. Kasi pinag-aaralan ang mga disease hindi siya basta-basta magagamot. Pinag-aaralan siya and they see parang pinag-aaralan nila kung paano siya mag-spread, kung yung rate ng pag-spread niya is rampant ba or ano yung rate ng pag-spread niya at kung ano yung symptoms niya so that they can know or they will know on how to formulate the vaccine that would suit it. And also, since the diseases are spreading globally, WHO expects equal response from different countries. However, some countries are proven unable and unwilling to be responsive in this global need. For example, yung China at ang Vietnam, it is for the avian virus or the bird flu, and they refuse to cooperate, and not really refuse, but they are not able or they are unable to respond directly or to be really responsive for this global issue or for this global concern. They are asked or the countries that are heavily affected by the bird flu, parang they are tasked or they are asked to give parang mag-provide ng samples for that because it is a serious problem in their countries. But accordingly, China and Vietnam are not unwilling or unable to do the task. So, the next slide. The next slide is about the AIDS or the HIV. So, we will further discuss about the HIV or the AIDS. So, it is a virus, of course, and globally, there are approximately 37.7 million or 30.2 to 45.1 million as a range of people were living with HIV at the end of 2020. 2020 lang to pero ang rami niya worldwide. Kasi ngayon, okay na ngayon kasi aware na ang mga tao about HIV. Parang ang dami ng mga campaigns, mga advocacies about HIV. So, medyo educated na ang mga tao. And also, it is parang kinakampaign na rin ng mga health workers or ng mga even doon sa mga lugar na hindi masyadong parang not are hindi masyadong wala silang masyadong knowledge about how it works, and then yung mga about sexually transmitted diseases. So parang ini-educate ng mga doctors and nurses yung mga tao, especially the students also. Parang ini-introduce nila into using condoms as a protector or In Africa, one well-known way in which the disease has spread across the continent is through truck drivers who work their way from country to country. If they have the disease, they may infect those who live in areas that were previously free of the disease. Kasi for example, kaya nga one popular or parang major talaga na transmission na disease which is specifically is AIDS is through sexual contact. So prostitution is everywhere, or not even prostitution, kahit sexual intercourse in general. Um, yun talaga yung one major transmittal of the disease. So in Africa, parang they are not into yung Africa kasi it is well known as one of the poorest country in the world. So parang malayo sila sa facility. I mean, wala silang masyadong facility in healthcare facility. People are not even educated about AIDS. Wala silang alam. They don't know even siguro ang use ng condom. I mean, some people may do, pero especially for in slum areas, wala masyadong parang hindi iniisip ng tao na I can be possibly have AIDS or anything, na parang carefree lang sila without using any condoms or any sexual protection. Especially women talaga yung kadalasang sobrang kawawa kasi and even men, equally, both sexes are heavily affected by HIV once they have. Because not only that you have the disease that na parang it's really life-threatening, but also the criticism that you get from other people. It will also psychologically sobrang mabigat yon. And the disease moves from region to region, country to country, and ultimately globally through human vectors. Yun kasi, sexual intercourse, from everywhere naman yan. Even from one country to another. Once, for example, nagbabakasyon yung mga tao, there is a very big possibility na magkakaroon siya ng sexual activity. Malalaki man siya o babae. So no country around the world that is more devastated than Africa due to AIDS, and their economy is highly affected, and they experience an economic collapse dahil sa HIV or sa AIDS kasi from the facilities pa lang, or even the people who are workers na siya yung bumibuild ng economy. Kasi once the worker, parang hindi na niya kaya kasi immune system kasi yung tina-target ng AIDS or HIV. So, nagkakaroon ng sickness ang isang tao, so possibly hindi na siya makapagtrabaho. So, there is a really decrease in their economic income. So, also, the children there are heavily affected by the disease. Ang apektado talaga ng disease or ng HIV is ang mga bata. Sobrang kawawa ng mga bata kasi they can have that disease through genetics from parents nila. So, ang pagkapanganak pa lang nila, they can have a disease on them. They had no choice kasi genetics. So out of the 34 million HIV positive people around the world or worldwide, 69% is living in sub-Saharan Africa. So imagine, it is 69% out of all the people in the world. So 60% yung nandun sa approximately 70%. So it is really highly devastated by the AIDS. Doon talaga yung rampant. Kasi walang masyadong health facilities din. Kaya naman, maraming mga nagvo-volunteer works to Africa kasi their medical facilities sobrang kawawa talaga. Dahil na rin sa on how poor the country is. And also, there are roughly 23.8 million infected persons in all of Africa. Doon sa Africa as a continent. So, 91% of the world's positive children live in Africa. So, imagine, ang highly affected talaga is children because they had no choice. Kasi genetic siya from their parents. So, they had no choice. They would live all their lives with the disease. Kasi, ang HIV as of now, or ang AIDS, there is no cure for that disease yet. Parang scientists or researchers are currently working on that. Kasi it is a worldwide disease, or this is a worldwide or global concern or problem na kinakaharap currently ng mga tao as of now, aside from COVID. So, more than 1 million adults and children die every day from AIDS or HIV in Africa alone. It's because it targets the immune system. Once na hindi na kaya ng immune system mo, wala na. Magpe-fail na ang other organs ng body mo. And specifically dahil sa Africa, starvation is very rampant din. So, paano magpa-fight yung, for example, ang isang bata, paano magpa-fight ang immune system niya is if walang masyadong nutrients yung katawan niya, if malnourished siya. So out of 34 million HIV positive people worldwide, 69% yes live in Africa. And ultimately, HIV is a virus attacks the immune system, and AIDS is a term that can only be used when HIV cause severe damage to the immune system o once na nag-fail na iyong organs. Kasi once an organ, or for example, nag-fail yung kidney mo, sunod-sunod na yan ang ibang organs na mag-fail on your body. And then, hanggang sa lahat ng organs mo is hindi na mag-work and mag-fail, and that would cause to death. And the next slide is, so the next one is we have here the avian flu or the bird flu. So avian flu is a spread through casual human contact related to bird flu. So and bird flu, it would include chicken na rin kasi chicken is a bird. So although bird flu may kill more than half the people it infects, the number of fatalities is still low because so few people have had bird flu. So hindi siya masyadong nasa-spread ang bird flu, but it is also very harmful to humans, and only few cases have been reported that had caused death. So, many died from direct contact to the birds or yung sa chicken rin, it is brought by birds. Then, in infecting chicken, yung sa Bisaya term pa is nagdungoy siya, gidungoy ang mga manok, and then, less developed countries are more prone because because also the ways of living. For example, production of chicken or any other birds such as ducks, pwede rin ducks or turkey. So less developed countries are more prone to this disease or the avian flu. And also, developed countries are unlikely to contact avian flu dahil na sa few have direct contact with live birds kasi yung when the on the ways of living na rin kasi in the livelihood. So mostly developed countries don't really work, yung mga tao nila or yung nasasakupan doesn't really work, o if meron mang nag-work, only a few doon sa bird or sa mga chicken factory farms. So it continues to spread globally among birds in 60 countries as of 2007. So this is a picture of a man infected with a bird flu, and then ito or avian flu. So those in less developed countries, nations are more likely to have such direct contact with birds. Some literally live with their birds dahil na rin sa trabaho, since consuming them and their eggs may be central to their food supply and or may an important business for them. So in contrast, relatively few in the developed world have direct contact with live birds, with the result that they have highly unlikely to contact avian flu. For example, in Dubai or other Middle East countries, hindi sila masyadong in-infect ng disease na avian flu. Specifically dahil wala naman masyadong farm doon for birds. It's not one of their primary livelihoods. So they're unlikely to have this kind of disease. So the next slide is about the COVID, is on how people globally handle this kind of disease or infections. So while the outbreak had only a limited effect, it demonstrated that globalization contributes to the spread of such diseases dahil na rin sa pag-open ng mga borders na nag-lead to direct or parang rampant transmittal of the disease. Parang mas madali yung spread niya dahil na rin sa open ang borders, and also dahil na rin sa globalization, for example, tourism. Kasi once na bakasyon ng tao and then, hindi niya alam na infected pala siya, and then gumagawa lang siya ng mga what he or she normally does, and then hindi niya alam naka-infect na pala siya or naka-harm na pala siya ng ibang tao. So, ability to deal with the pandemic has been enhanced through globalization. For example, global monitoring and the ability to get health workers and pharmaceuticals rapidly to the site of an outbreak through the transportation. Mas madali sila. So, may helicopter naman, or for example, may mga bus. So, globalization also lead to mas madali or enhanced na pag-deal ng mga diseases. And also, one of the borderless diseases is COVID-19 virus that has originated in China dahil na rin sa, accordingly sa rats and bats na pinagmula nito. So, COVID-19 virus is an example also of a borderless disease na we are currently handling right now, as of now. So, we undergo also quarantine, and as of now, fortunately, researchers had formulated vaccines na some or most of us now, people in the Philippines and other countries, have vaccinated already. So COVID-19 that had killed so many people is also one of a borderless disease, or an example of an infectious, harmful, and borderless disease. And the next one is about the SARS, or an outbreak of SARS occurred in 2003, with the virus spread largely via airline passengers from mainland China to Hong Kong, and from there to Singapore and Canada, according to Lee and Ward 2008, as cited in Ritzer'S 2009. Kasi that virus, o yung isang tao hindi niya alam na may virus na pa siya, infected na pala siya, unaware siya, and not medically diagnosed, is naka-harm siya or naka-spread ng disease from that person through airline passengers o dahil for travel, kasi madaming tao in traveling. And the next one is the Ebola virus. So, Ebola virus has also been parang nagka-pandemic dahil also once in the history of diseases and infections or viruses, nagkaroon din ng pandemic dahil sa Ebola virus. And also, again, Africa is highly affected by this virus also. And Ebola hemorrhagic fever is a viral disease that was first identified in Sudan and Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in 1976, or in Africa. So, spread through direct contact, which is blood, body fluids, saliva, and tissue of those infected with the disease. So, unlike HIV, it includes body fluids and saliva. So, it doesn't, for example lang na passengers kayo tapos magkatabi kayo without talking, or wala namang laway na tumatasik from that person to you, or from another, hindi siya magkaka-spread, unlike other diseases na also it direct contact and not casual contact yung pagkaka-spread niya ng disease. So it occurred through handling of chimpanzees that have the disease or died from it. So it can also possibly occur kapag especially sa zoo to. Kasi zoo lang naman yung nagkakaroon ng chimpanzees, of course. Then health officials rush to the affected area and seek to contain it by ministering to the sick and by restricting contact with those outside the affected area or quarantine. So the next one is the Ebola virus again. So this is an example, or this is how Ebola virus looks like, and it is how it affects or it target a person's body, or a body of a person. So Ebola is a virus that causes problems with how your blood clots, so nagkakaproblema. For example, if you have kapag may sugat ka, so mahirap siya or matagal siyang matagal siyang mag-heal dahil na rin sa Ebola virus kasi tina-target nga is yung blood clots mo or yung platelets. It enables or unable your blood clotting to process well. So it is known as a hemorrhagic fever virus because the clotting problems lead to internal bleeding as blood leaks from small vessels in your body. So the virus causes inflammation and tissue damage, which is very, very harmful to your body. And the next one is the tropical diseases in Europe. So borrelious disease is related to another global problem, which is the global warming or yung pag-init ng mundo. So global warming, increase of disease-bearing vectors, that is, for example, mosquitoes from hot tropical areas to survive in areas like Europe, heating up caused by global warming. So dahil na rin sa pag-init ng mundo is nagkakaroon ng migration ang mga mosquitoes from kasi nag-iiba yung climate nung for example, that country is malamig siya noon pero dahil sa global warming is parang nag-warm na siya through time. So nagkakaroon ng manifestation yung mga mosquitoes doon kasi they can live there na kasi maano na warm na yung area, so they love warm areas. So it is more likely na kasi parang iinit ng mas iinit yung mundo, and then there would be masarami daw accordingly into the book na mas mararami daw yung mosquitoes dahil nga papainit yung mundo. So the more na mas i-increase yung rate ng global warming, mas magkakaroon ng mas malaki ang chance na mas magkakaroon ng mga borderless diseases. And then the next one is the tiger mosquitoes that yung nagdadala ng diseases. So it arrived in Italy about a decade ago. So approximately mga 2013. 2012 I'm sorry. And then from Albania through shipments of tar. And it spread throughout southern Europe, Switzerland, and France. And it spread chikungunya or by drinking the blood of the person infected by disease and then passing it. Kasi yung mga mosquitoes, they suck blood from one person to another. So it leads to transmission of the disease. And the next one is in August 2007, there was an outbreak of the disease. About 100 people contracted it in a small village, 2,000 residents in northern Italy, and it was traced to the visit of an infected person from India. So, probably hindi alam ng India na to na infected pala siya. So, victims often have fevers of 104 degrees, which normally kapag the normal body temperature is more nandun sa 36.5 degrees Celsius. So how much gaano siya kainit for 104 degrees? If we will imagine, grabe na yung init ng katawan ng taong yon. So symptoms include arthritis long after infected from the disease. So parang aftermath ng disease is arthritis for some people. And also, mosquitoes like warmer areas or weather conditions na parang nagmamanifest siya doon sa mga warmer areas dahil na rin sa global warming nga na na-experience natin ngayon, parang mas lumalala or mas nagmamanifest yung mga mosquitoes. And the next topic is crime, which is also very rampant in the global world. And it is another one of the sub-chapters in chapter 10, which is the negative global flows and processes. So according to Andreas and Nadelman 2006, as cited in Ritzer'S 2009, that a sheer quantity or cross-border crime has increased globally. So it seems to be far more of such crime dahil na rin sa globalization. So mas nagkakaroon, mas rumarami yung crimes na ginagawa ng mga tao or in the global age dahil na rin sa globalization. So parang it says that globalization opens to more crimes. And then it increase in global criminal flows dahil na rin sa globalization. So it largely traceable into increasing concern with drugs in the US in the late 1960s and early 1970s. And drugs and terrorism can come together. Kasi yung drugs parang as of now, dahil sa globalization, parang nagkakaroon na siya, yung drugs kasi parang nagkaka-modernize dahil na rin sa globalization or dahil na sa advancement ng technology, is yung shipments, yung paggawa ng drugs, yung process ng pagbebenta niya is parang nag-enhance or nag-advance dahil na rin nagiging high-tech dahil sa globalization, or it opens also to drug production. Yung globalization is because of the borders. Parang nagkakaroon ng parang parang na hindi na masyadong mahigpit yung borders dahil ina-allow ng isang country to another, also because of their dahil na rin sa commitment na isang country to another, so it opens its borders. At nagli-lead ito, or mas lumalaganap ang drug production or ng terrorism. And the next, and also accordingly, globalization also opened to more sophisticated weaponry and technology. An endangered species, yun yung mga crime na kinukumit ng mga tao or group of people or global cartels or yung mga union, yung mga grupo. They do some of the crimes na ginagawa ng mga tao is sophisticated weaponry or technology, yung production ng guns or yung illegal arm arm production or yun, and technology and endangered species, pornographic materials, counterfeit products, guns, ivory, toxic waste, money, and even people or human trafficking, and stolen property and art and antiquities, according to Andreas and Adelman 2006 as cited in Ritzer'S 2009. So, prostitution or human trafficking also. And even yung mga what we call this, the endangered species. Kasi one example of the endangered species na talagang sobrang kawawa is in the Philippines or even in around the world or any country is the pangolin. Yung pangolin kasi ginagawa daw siya medicine in China, and also para siya sa mga bags na yung skin niya is ginagamit. So they are killing pangolins for the sake of luxury items or for the sake of medicine. Kasi it is considered as crime kasi endangered species na ang mga pangolins. And there are so many pangolins na pinapatay every year para lang dito. So, para na siyang, kumbaga, para na siyang, and it is illegal talaga kasi nga ay pinagbabawal dahil endangered species na ang mga pangolin, but most people patuloy pa rin. And also the pornography, specifically the child pornography na ginagamit yung mga bata para lang para masatisfy yung mga pedophiles na mga adults, and which is also a crime kasi mga bata yun eh. And also for even prostitution, it is also. And also the toxic waste or yung mga oil spillage kasi nagko-cause to ng environmental problems na dala-dala ng globalization also. And also the drugs, and even the guns and weaponry. And also accordingly, yung sa shipments ng mga drugs dahil or mga guns dahil na rin sa globalization is that gumagamit na sila ng submarines. That's how high-tech and globalized those people who commit crime or the unions that committed that, or yeah. And then also the next slide would be global criminal cartels. And what are these global criminal cartels, o ano ba to na union ito, yung mga global criminal cartels or union? So they are the structures that have come into existence to better expedite illegal flows and to increase the profits that can be derived from them. So mas mabisa yung strategy nila kung paano nila papalusutin yung illegal na products, and that is the global criminal cartels. So para silang yun na nagtutulungan, or they have this strategy na, or the big boss even, or which the mafia groups para makapag ng drugs, makapag-produce from countries to countries. And it's also a crime, and very very really a crime, of course. And then the use of new technologies for more successful execution of crimes. Dahil na rin sa technology, parang ino-open niya, specifically the internet. Yun nga yung sabi ko kanina, is gumagamit silang submarine into their shipments of drugs. And internet also because it creates more crimes. Internet and even technology create more crimes kasi through internet there will be cyber crimes, scams, and meron ding for example the parang negotiation na na nangyayari na online kasi pwedeng magbenta na online na kaya parang ang internet it causes more crime. And also in the black market kasi yung black market it is internet or it is online at yun din parang mas lumagana o mas lumalaki yung crimes because of internet. And the next one is the illegal source of things that flow through the World Wide Web or WWW. That is, for example, child pornography, laundered funds, and the spread of computer viruses. The child pornography, kasi parang ginagamit o na-traffic yung mga bata to do child pornography or iba walang choice. And it's also a crime. Parang nagpo-profit yung mga tao because of internet kasi ginagamit nila in a very bad way, which is in committing crimes. So this is the black market where negotiations happened also, which is very illegal. And the next one is crime is always a matter of social definition or social construction according to Good and Ben Hyodan 1994, Brownstein 1996, and cited in Ritzer'S 2009. So what does it mean about the social definition and social construction? Meaning daw, ang crime is hindi siya mabubuo unless a group of people is campaigning na it should be considered as crime. One best example for this one is drugs. So it also means that one-time normal comes to be defined or defined deviant or ipinagbabawal na siya or prohibited. And one example of this one is cocaine kasi noon, cocaine is one of the ingredients or parang hinahalo siya sa Coca-Cola which is iniinom. So noon, cocaine is not illegal. At dahil din, doon pumapasok yung social definition and social construction. Kasi may mga tao, and there will be a group of people that would fight na illegal dapat to siya. Kasi even marijuana, in most countries, marijuana is already legal dahil for medical uses or medical purposes. But in some countries also, it is still illegal. Yung marijuana, yung paggamit ng marijuana. And it is because of the campaign made by a group of people. And there are specifically called the moral entrepreneurs. So they are the individuals or group of individuals who come to define an act as a moral outrage and lead a campaign to have it defined as deviant. So sila yung fight na dapat deviant o dapat i-prohibit to, dapat itong product na to, it's no longer safe for people. Sila yung fight na nag-a-advocate sila. And also to have it made illegal and therefore subject to illegal enforcement. So I take government officials para maging illegal yung isang product or isang bagay. And one example of that one is drugs, cocaine, and marijuana. So drugs, which is for example, marijuana was defined even of its practical uses, which is medical uses. Kasi there are certain diseases na marijuana lang yung makakapagpagaling. And the next one is the nation states of Western Europe and US. So accordingly din daw sa book is the Western Europe and US sila yung parang nagli-lead kung paano i-deal yung certain crimes na nangyayari in the global world or globally. So sila yung parang nagli-lead, sila yung leader kung ano yung mga concepts, mga strategies na gagawin. And then other countries, which is the less developed countries, sila yung parang ang ginagawa nilang standard yung Western Europe o ng US kung ano yung ginagamit nila, kung ano yung ginagawa lang, how they deal with those crimes. Parang yun yung basis ng ibang countries into that. So parang linilid ng US at saka Europe. And then also one of the main global concern now is the growing poppies in Afghanistan and drug production in Guatemala. Kasi yung growing poppies will somehow, as I research it, parang ginagawa rin daw siyang drugs. So, it is one now of the major concern or the global concern around the world. Yung sa growing of puppies in Afghanistan, which is this, and the drug production in Guatemala. And the very popular drug as of this day is what we call the methamphetamine or the meth. It is relatively new, a new global drug made easily and cheaply through home-based cooking facilities that is using pseudoephedrine or a main ingredient in cough medicine that is spread through Czech Republic. So it is a very popular drug as of now, and this is how it looks like. It looks like a crystal. So, it is also, yes, very illegal yung drugs na yun as of now. So, we have also here free trade zones na nag-aalaw din siya na nag-aalaw ito on more execution of crimes. Kasi para ang trade zones is what we call the structures that expedite the flow of illegal products. They are efficient transmit points according to Bogdanich 2007 as cited in Ritzer'S 2009. So parang nag-aalaw siya free trade zones kasi parang ginagawa niyang borderless ang isang lugar or isang country. So nakakapasok yung mga shipments ng mga illegal shipments some of them contain drugs, yung mga what we call it, yung mga shipments na the yung mga yung malalaking I forgot the term, that the square one in the yung sa mga barko yun. It is free trade zones, parang inaalaw niya or parang um, nagagawan niya ng way yung mga crimes into or the shipments into occurring, and fake drugs. So we are also here what we call fake drugs that travel from China to Hong Kong through Dubai to Great Britain and even the Bahamas, and then ultimately to the internet or in the black market or the World Wide Web, and where an internet seller sells it or who markets them to Americans as Canadian drugs. So it is by this, parang ang hirap na siyang i-trace or ang hirap nang hanapin kung saan yung manufacturer or saan yung production ng gagaling ng drugs. It's because dumaan siya sa napakaraming countries. That is one of the strategies na ginagamit ng mga tao. So it is China, Hong Kong, Dubai, Great Britain, and Bahamas. So it's very complex kung paano na siya, hindi na siya matrace agad-agad. So it is very difficult to find out where the illegal drugs have been manufactured. And also, according to the book, is yung itong crimes din yung, or even the response, the global response to drugs, or even the global response to different crimes, is parang naglo-lower din siya ng ng ating income para kasi nafo-focus daw yung yung crimes nafo-focus siya, and then some also yung human rights is parang naaapektahan kasi, for example, in human trafficking, yung nafo-focus is yung pag-criminalize ng traffic or yung ng crime without considering on the people that are victims of the human trafficking. Parang yung human rights ng mga tao ng biktima ng isang crime is parang nawawalan na siya ng masyadong attention because globally parang nafo-focus na dun sa crime and how to deal with it without na dealing on how to deal with the human rights of the victims affected by it. And the next slide is the crimes. Again, it requires limited and readily available resources, no particular expertise to commit, and are easily concealed o madaling matago, unlikely to be reported to the authorities. Because they have here connections, and also yung pag-ship nila is very high-tech na. and those for which the consumer demand is substantial, resilient, and not readily substituted for why alternative activities or products um, can be considered as crime kasi yung drugs hindi naman yan kaya masubstitute na anything rather than other types of drugs then. So illegal drugs to be specific. And then foreign governments have changed their own laws and enforcement methods and signed extradition, mutual legal assistance, and other law enforcement treaties demanded by US authorities. So parang in this case, dun sa pag-respond na or into giving solutions to the global crimes na ini-experience globally is parang nag-benefit rin yung US. Kasi yung US para siyang ginagawang basis ng mga foreign governments or ng iba't ibang nation states or ng iba-ibang countries into creating their laws. Parang ginagawa siyang basis. So, ito yung ginawa ng US, ito yung sundin natin. Because parang dinilid nila. So, nagbe-benefit yung US kasi parang it is parang na rin siyang sinisignify nun na they are top of many. Para siyang sila yung nangunguna, sila pa rin yung mas nakakalamang sa ibang country because they are the one who are parang ginagawa silang basis kung paano gagawin yung mga pag-iimbestiga. It was inspired by US. Sila pa rin yung sinusunod ng most of the countries around the world. And the next one is greater border and immigration controls have led to more daring and dangerous efforts to cross borders, leading to more deaths in the process. And violation to human rights and threats to democracy or the global crime control is parang mas tumataas yung rate ng violation to human rights kasi nga nafo-focus na yung crime other than the human rights of the people that are victims of that particular crime. And stop human trafficking dahil na sa human.
Hello everyone, I am Sifulabi Panda and this is my report about terrorism. What is terrorism? Terrorism is the use of force or violence against persons or property in violations of the criminal laws of the United States for purpose of intimidation, coercion, or ransom. Terrorists often use threats to create fear among the public. There is a tendency to discuss crime and terrorism as distinct phenomena, but they overlap to some degree. Silly 2006, 42, and 5. As farmers in Afghanistan were once heavily reliant on wheat farming to make sufficient income, the development of poppy cultivation has given many of these farmers a boost and capital, even though opium may be a more dangerous product to distribute. More recently, the Taliban has gotten involved in the marble business in Afghanistan by demanding, extorting flat fees and taxes from quarry owners. Zubair and Perley's 2008 E1 and E8 for their both crimes and terrorism are global in character and have been ended by various aspects of globalization. Terrorism, action that cause deaths, serious bodily injuries, and serious damage to public or private property, places, facilities, or other system and are aimed at intimidating citizens, government, or international organization. It is similar to non-state terrorism in that it involves politically or ideologically or religiously inspired acts of violence against individuals or groups outside of an armed conflict. The key difference of the violence, both forms are increasingly global, as witnessed by Al-Qaeda's 9 and 11 attacks on the US and US missile and bombing attacks on Iraq at the beginning of the war in 2003 that destroyed non-military targets either internationally or because they involve collateral damage associated with the attacks on the main target. There is a tendency to discuss crime and terrorism as distinct phenomena, but they overlap to some degree. Silly 2006, 42, and 5. As farmers in Afghanistan were once heavily reliant on wheat farming to make sufficient income, the development of poppy cultivation has given many of these farmers a boost and capital, even though opium may be a more dangerous product to distribute. More recently, the Taliban has gotten involved in the marble business in Afghanistan by demanding extorting flat fees and taxes from quarry owners. Zubair and Perley's 2008 E1 and E8 for their both crimes and terrorism are global in character and have been ended by various aspects of globalization. Global terrorism can stem from the adverse effects of globalization, imbalance of power, disparity of players and power, vacuum-filled state, separatists, minorities, and radicals use terrorism as warfare in order to counterbalance the power gap or to consolidate their authority. There are several other characteristics of the new global age that aids today's terrorists. First, terrorists are very likely to try to carry out attacks in the Philippines. You should remain vigilant at all times and report anything suspicious to the local authorities. Second, Country Reports on Terrorism 2019 is submitted in compliance with the Title 22 of the United States Code Section 2656F, the Act, which requires the Department of State to provide to Congress a full and complete annual report on terrorism for those countries and groups meeting the criteria of the Act. Third, there are at least some in much of the Islamic world sympathetic to or at least tolerant of the ideas and actions of Al-Qaeda because of global actions taken against them, real and preserved by the West, especially the US. At last, finally, the weapons at the disposal of recent terrorist organizations are also reflection and a part of global age. The most obvious example is the Al-Qaeda of jetliners in the 9 and 11 attacks. Four basic characteristics of complex global microstructures. First, terrorists successfully exploit the process of globalization and use it to increase the resilience violence means and presents globally. Globalization that is highly developed and economic downturn has led to increased violence. Second, they achieve this effectiveness in several ways, including augmenting and amplifying their effect by using such technologies as hijack airplanes and the media, especially the internet. Four basic characteristics of complex global microstructures. First, terrorists successfully exploit the process of globalization and use it to increase the resilience violence means and presents globally. Globalization that is highly developed and economic downturn has led to increased violence. Second, they achieve this effectiveness in several ways, including augmenting and amplifying their effect by using such technologies as hijack airplanes and the media, especially the internet. And third, it is not just relational connectivity that holds these microstructures together, they are far richer and more textured than that. And finally, but they have succeeded and continuing to exist over time, and the combination of the two forms of existence, spatial, spatial and temporal, gives them greater complexity. That's all be all. Thank you.
So in overall, is it possible to determine whether globalization makes war less or more likely? So these are those who argue that the increasing economic bonds that accompany globalization are likely to mean a reduction in the likelihood of war. That is, nation states are unlikely to sacrifice valuable economic relationship by going to war with one another. So, on the other hand, the economic gains of war may seem so great that nations may be more likely to engage in warfare, no matter what the consequences for their relationships with other nation states. Then there is the huge global market for and flow of weapons of all sorts, new and used. Such a huge market serves to make such weapons increasingly inexpensive, and they can be acquired easily and quickly. So, one of the example is this is yun nga yung war between Ukraine and Russia. Some countries supported Ukraine kasi alam nilang hindi walang laban ang Ukraine sa Russia because Russia is a big country while some countries supported Russia. So, and some countries and didn't even engage in the war between Ukraine and uh, Russia. Another factor making war more likely in the age of globalization is time and space compression, both of which make it easier to engage in warfare with other countries. Militaries can be mobilized rapidly, and they can be moved across great distances more quickly and easily. An example of this is in the case of the coalition of military forces involved in the first war against Iraq following its invasion of Kuwait. Furthermore, new global technology make it possible to wage wars thousands of miles away without ever leaving home. An example is the employment in Afghanistan of those drones equipped with missiles that are controlled remotely by military technicians in the US using computers and video monitors. And overall, the best we can do is to say that globalization has an ambiguous relationship with the likelihood of international warfare. What we can say unambiguously is that in various ways of globalization is changing and will continue to change the nature of warfare. So next is all about technology. What is the part of technology in the globalizations of war? So one of the things that makes war today increasingly likely to be global is the existence of advanced information and communications technologies, or also known as the ICTs, such as computers and satellites. Of course, it is the developed countries, especially the US, that are likely to have the ability to afford to have access to and to use these technologies. But even the less developed countries are implicated in this, at least in the sense that the technologies are likely to be used against them. Thus, the US uses its satellites to keep track of developments in some of the world's least developed countries, such as Afghanistan and Somalia, as well as to guide the use of military technology. Uh, One of the example is the drones in them. So, sobrang laki ng impact ng technology when it comes sa war. So, dahil sa technology, nalalaman natin kung ano yung mga uh, current events na nangyayari sa or nalalaman natin yung news about the war between the Russia and Ukraine. What are their status na kung ilan yung namatay, or ano yung kung makikita natin sa social media, especially sa TikTok videos, or even the Facebook, is makikita natin kung gaano talaga yung ka-high-tech or ka-high-tech yung mga ginagamit na barel sa kasalukuyang war or the current war between the Russia and the Ukraine. So, it is important to remember that technologies do not act of their own accordance. People and social organizations are needed to bring such technologies into existence to decide how they are to be used, and then to use them in that way. So let's proceed to the difference between industrial war versus information war. So industrial war generally involved sovereign nation states, and the homeland deeply supported it. It was fought over territory. It involved the mobilization of a large portion of the population and led to mass casualties. It was largely symmetrical in that massed armies confronted one another. It witnessed the media harnessed in support of the war effort, and it provided the media with only a very limited view of what was taking place on the battlefield. So, sa industrial, hindi sila masyadong involved sa technologies. So, kung baga yung like sabi nga nila, it is very limited yung binibigay nilang information sa media. So while sa information war, in contrast, information war involves information permitting all aspects of war. It involves all sorts of new technologies. Like for example, is digital soldiers, drones, and computer-driven weapons, etc. It is massively asymmetrical in that only the most advanced nations, especially the US, have access to these technologies. It involves relatively small numbers of troops, many of whom are better taught as known knowledge warriors. It is less oriented to gaining territory. It involves only a small portion of the population, and it is likely to be a war of short duration. So, sa information war, from the word itself, information. Kumbaga, lahat ng nangyayari sa conflict na between two parties is alam ng media. Example is yun nga yung Russia versus Ukraine. So maraming technology ang involved sa conflict na yon, and also it is very widely spread in many countries yung nangyari sa Ukraine and Russia. So we are now down to the last topic in the chapter 10, which is all about the cyber war. So as we all know, or when we heard the word cyber, it involves social media, it involves internet, involves computers and technologies. So the increasing importance of computers and the internet has had, as we have seen in various places, many implications for globalizations. One of the potentially most important and devastating is the possibility of cyber war, which indeed this is not just a possibility, but it already occurred, has occurred. The most notably is in the case of Estonia in the mid year of 2007. So the war began when the Estonians start dismantling a statue of a WW II Russian soldiers in a park in the city of Tallinn. Street protests, perhaps violent ones, were expected, but so were actions to disrupt the internet in Estonia. The internet is particularly important in Estonia today, with people using it for many things, including voting, paying their taxes, shopping, and paying for parking. The dismantling of the statue did not indeed lead to what some have described as the first war in cyberspace. As a flood of data overwhelmed the internet in Estonia, it is believed that the flood stemmed from, or was at least instigated by, people in Russia or ethnic Russians in Estonia who were upset by this affront to them. However, there is not only no proof of this, but apparently no way to prove it, given the markedness of sources on the internet. Whatever the sources, computers around the world, perhaps as many as a million, were infiltrated with bots and become unwitting contributors or zombies to to the assault. The Russian government denied involvement, but the war against Estonia's internet system was probably orchestrated from somewhere and by some city. More important from the point of view of globalization, it eventually probably emanated from virtually everywhere in the globe. The flood of data almost shut down the internet in Estonia, and this is in spite of advanced preparation and anticipation of such an assault. The technique used in attack is known as denial of service, since it denies service to users by clogging not only servers but also routers that direct traffic on the web. It is the combination of the use of large amounts of data with the use of large numbers of machines that defines a denial of service attack and is so dangerous to the internet. Among those most affected in Estonia were the websites of the president, prime minister, parliament, other government agencies, the nation's largest bank, and several newspapers. Among other things, members of parliament were without email for 4 days, and traveling business people could not access their bank accounts. Estonia's defense minister saw it as a threat to national security analogous to shutting down a nation's ports. Among the devices used were masses of junk email, hacking into websites, and making false postings on websites. There are currently not only national efforts to figure out how to respond to such attacks, but also a kind of arms race involving China, Russia, and the US, all of which are seeking to develop more powerful information warfare programs. This raises the possibility of far more devastating attacks than those on Estonia. But for the moment, the attacks seem less nation-based and more organized by the hacktivists motivated by a specific cause, like the dismantling of the statue of the Russian soldier. So cyber war is all about the a war in the in the case of internet, or a war that is happening uh, or involving internet. So ito yung kumbaga, a cyber war is nangyayari ito in the internet. Kumbaga, sa two parties, one of the parties is nagpo-post sila ng false informations about their rivalry. So that's what I understand about the cyber war. So that's all for my part, which is the all about war. And thank you for watching. And again, my name is Hakima Lanto Maruhum. Have a good day.
So, human trafficking. So, mas tumataas yung rate ng injustices nila kasi hindi na focus yung yung mga human rights ng victim but the crime itself. So, to summarize it all, how really globalization opens to more crimes kasi doon sa internet, doon sa new technologies or in advancement of technologies or yung sa pagkakaroon ng pag-open ng borders from one countries to another is mas naaano siya, mas napapadali niya ang shipments, mas napapadali niya ang ng flow ng crime, specifically yung um, yung process or ng shipments ng mga drugs, yung other, even the pornography or the human trafficking, mas pinapadali niya eh. Specifically sa internet, kasi yung pornography, prostitution, and the internet is very rampant. Kasi most people nag-human traffic sila dahil ginagawa nilang biktima into satisfying the sexual needs of other people. It's very illegal. Kasi natatapakan na yung human rights ng mga tao doon. And it's considered really a crime, of course. Kasi it's against some of the people eh. And even if it's not against their will, parang it's really a crime because it's against the law. And also, the internet also parang ino-open yung opportunities to people onto negotiating more na parang mas safe a little bit. And then, kasi hindi naman siya direct na nagkikita-kita so it's not really traceable na madali siyang matrace kasi internet siya eh. And then also, so to summarize it all, and we have here the chapter summary. So dangerous imports and borderless diseases are crime, terrorism, war, move across borders with ease at a great speed. And it's a global value chains involved the importation of both products and product ingredients and flows of drugs, money, victims, perpetrators, which is the perpetrators are what we call yung nagaano ng mga drugs yung sila yung nag nag-lead or basta yung mga part ng mga organizations of illegal transports of drugs and then as well as illegal commodities or physical or virtual channels and global spread of diseases which is the growing mobility of people dahil na rin sa tourism. And also, terrorism which is very close to drugs also. Yung terrorism pala ay yung perpetrators pala is yung mga tao na gustong um, mag mag-take over o gumawa ng terrorism or mga terrorists pala, yun pala yung meaning niya. This defined as actions that brings devastation of everything. Kasi once na mayroong terrorism, for example, one main example of terrorism is the MS usage. So dahil na rin sa MS usage is kasi bomba yun, war yun eh, dahil sa terrorism because tinitake over nila ang place. And also, many people will die kasi nadi-devastate yung livelihood ng mga tao, yung mga what we call this, yung mga buildings or yung mga facilities, yung mga and many others that is part of their livelihood. Kasi kapag parang war is babalik na naman tayo sa zero, back to zero na naman at magsisimula na naman ulit. It is very na sobrang apektado yung ekonomiya ng isang bansa. And also, warfare is increasingly influenced by globalization also. Kasi there are things that happen na nagkakos ng warfare dahil na rin sa globalization. Kasi mas nagkakaroon ng, for example, kasi accordingly, yung war naman daw is parang planado siya through globalization kasi paano mabebenta yung mga guns without a war. So para siyang negotiation or negosyo daw accordingly. And then economic gains on war, or economic gains on war and easy access to weapons in the global area, which is partly in the globalization. And that would be all. Thank you for listening for this topic. And this ends the chapter 10, which is the negative global flows and processes. Thank you very much for your time and thank you for listening.